Morning, glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Kennedy Hewitt from France. And we are actually on a ship that is moving, so we do not know how long the signal will continue uninterrupted. But because we have Ed Morrissey co-hosting with me today, as he has dutifully all this week and last week, Ed is in Texas. Good morning, Edward. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. Great to be with you.
And so we've got that little bit of delay between France and Texas, which is because Texas is not yet connected fully to the internet. But we are standing by in case anything bad goes bad. We're ready to go and talk to you. I got a lot of news to cover, but let me say I may not be the world's most prepared host. They just spent the last 2 hours listening to the Orange and Brown podcast, which is a podcast of Cleveland.com sports writers on the NFL draft tonight. Now, I am 66 years old, and I think I've watched the NFL draft for every year that it's been televised for the last 25 to 30 years. And I may get up in the middle of the night just to watch the draft, even though the Browns don't have a first-round choice. But if you listen to podcasts, the Orange and Brown podcast is so great because they simulate a war room, Ed, and they've got six great reporters in there and a draft analyst actually in real time. Do you watch the draft, Ed?
I haven't watched the draft in years. The Steelers are pretty good without having to worry about the draft. And I hear in Texas that they even have some pretty good football teams out here as well.
That's a lie. Actually, I found out from the head of the Salvation Army of the United States last week that Jerry Jones hosts the Salvation Army. He's a huge Salvation Army supporter, so I am now kind of a Cowboys fan because of the way Jerry Jones supports the Salvation Army. Edward, I want to start with George Rapp is along with us, and George is a Tribble, as is Cynical Chuck. And George sent me a story that I couldn't quite believe. I thought maybe he was screwing with me, which would not be unusual for the Tribbles. So let me read this to you. Biden to appoint new disinformation czar. Nina Jankowicz will head the Disinformation Governance Board. The story reads, the Department of Homeland Security is setting up a new board designed to counter misinformation related to Homeland Security with a focus specifically on Russia and irregular migration. The board will be called up the Disinformation Governance Board and will be headed by Executive Director Nina Jankowicz. Now, this is from a website called Post Millennial. I don't know the website. I don't know if this is true, but I'm not in the United States. Is it true, Ed?
Yeah, I've heard the same thing. I am not. I haven't read much about this, but I have heard that Nina Jankowicz is being appointed to that. This is. It's very interesting that they're only focusing on Russia issues and irregular migration. What is irregular migration? Is that when you come into the country thinking that you're going to be going into a really great place like Texas, but you wind up in Cleveland? I'm not sure what irregular migration means.
It's Orwellian, isn't it? It's like, I think they mean illegal aliens. I think they mean people who crossed into the country without legal permission. Dwayne points to me cut number 11, so let's play cut number 11, Ben.
Our Undersecretary for Policy, Rob Silvers, is co-chair with our Principal Deputy General Counsel, Jennifer Daskell, in leading a just recently constituted Misinformation, Disinformation Governance Board. So we're bringing, the goal is to bring the resources of the department together to address this threat.
No, I can't believe that. I actually finished last night editing with the Washington Post a column that will come out sometime today or tomorrow about how the First Amendment only applies to government action, state action, and sometimes organizations can become entwined with the government and they've become state actors and therefore they're subject to the restriction of the First Amendment. We don't have disinformation boards in the United States. We do have Voice of America, and they're not allowed to do propaganda. We don't have boards to say this is disinformation and not disinformation. We do have the ability to take out Russian bots, but this is ominous to me. What say you, Ed Morrissey? Do you think that this is a lot of bad news or a little bit of bad news?
I think it's at least a little bit of bad news. By the way, I've just I looked up Nina Jankowicz's Twitter feed, and she's the one who actually announced the fact that she's going to be doing this. Politico has also reported, so it's not just Post Millennial. Politico's reported on this as well. She is on the record as apparently as criticizing First Amendment absolutism as helping to marginalize certain communities in the United States, because there's this whole thread this week, right, about free speech absolutism. I mean, I have never heard the term free speech absolutism before Elon Musk bought Twitter. Have you ever heard of free speech absolutism as an issue until the media?
Actually, I have it. I call myself a First Amendment absolutist, and I also I refer to secular absolutists when it comes to abortion rights arguments, because secular absolutists are in favor of abortion up to the moment of birth. So absolutists are people for whom there is no margin, no gray. And William Brennan, who used to carry around the Constitution in their back pocket, and William O. Douglas used to carry around the Constitution, the Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment, and said, Congress shall make no law. What does no law mean to you? And so he was an First Amendment absolutist. But it's not an absolutist amendment in practice. So we'll watch that space. Let me get to the biggest story of the day, Edward, because this is a big story. New York Times. The highest court in New York yesterday ruled that the Democratic leaders had violated New York state constitution when they drew the new congressional maps. They tossed it out. Now, the Democrats were counting on the New York maps to offset the coming red wave. They got the Illinois map, the New York maps, and the Maryland maps were supposed to offset the Texas, Florida, and Ohio maps. The Ohio maps have been thrown out. They've been back in. Florida and Texas maps look like they're going to stick. Illinois map looks like it's going to stick. Maryland map looks like it's going to stick. I'm stunned, but there are 7 Democratic governor-appointed justices on that Supreme Court. So if 4 of them said the map is unconstitutional, I still want to leave it with the legislature, because I don't really care about gerrymandering, provided they don't use race and provided it's one person, one vote. What did you make of that announcement?
I'm a little surprised by that as well, for the same reasons that you are. And maybe I'm an absolutist on this position, but I don't think that this is a legislative function. It's designed that way so that the legislators who design these things are accountable to the people who are being redistricted. And so shoving this off to commissions is an abandonment of responsibility. It's abandonment of that type of accountability. So I am usually somebody who is coming down on the favor of the legislatures in these matters. I am really stunned, though, that the New York Supreme Court tossed out that map, and I guess on partisan basis, I'm a little happy about that, because I think that when they redraw it, it'll be a little bit less onerous for Republicans running in New York. But let's face it, Republicans have plenty of headwinds already, even without a hostile redistricting.
Yeah, they do. Tailwinds. They have tailwinds, but in the national map, but headwinds in New York. Right. Edward, some of the tribbles, for the benefit of the new listeners in New Bern, Carolina, and other places, tribbles are the annoying folks who listen every day, and then they get on the online community and they listen to the after show. They subscribe to the Universe, which we appreciate, and they actually engage with Dwayne and listen to Dwayne's after show every day. And a couple of tribbles are traveling with us. But they looked up from their empty bottles this morning and they wondered, why am I calling you Edward instead of Ed? And that's because you've got a jacket on. And when you wear a jacket, I call you Edward. When you take your jacket off, I call you Ed. And it's
well,
that
so much
simple.
for the jacket. It's coming off now.
Yeah, well, Edward is, if he's dressed up, I always ask to be called Hugh when my jacket's on and when it's off. And so that's why I'm calling you that. Other news of the morning, the government in Israel is going to fall apart. The most serious thing is Vladimir Putin rattled the nuclear saber again last night. We got a minute to the break, Edward. How worried are you that he's actually getting close?
I don't know that I'm worried that he's getting close. I tend to think that there's some structural impediments to him actually deploying these things. But I think that the fact that they keep rattling the saber shows how desperate they are in Ukraine, and desperation drives people to do some pretty crazy things.
It does. Also want to let everyone know over at salemnow.com, new movie called, from Dinesh D'Souza, 3,000 Mules. That's what it's called, Generalissimo? Is it called? I think it's 3,000.
I think it's 3,000 Mules.
3,000 Mules. You want to go and watch that if you are into the whole Georgia Senate election. Is it 3,000 Mules, Ed? I think it's 3,000 Mules. Over at Salem. 2,000 mules. Okay, I lost my note sheet here because I'm in France. 2,000 mules.
3.
Having to do with Georgia voter fraud. If that intrigues you, that's the thing to watch. Dinesh will make as persuasive a case as can be made that that's a significant issue. That's at salemnow.com. When I come back now, we will talk more about the Cleveland Browns draft, because I know most of this audience. We have got Matt Dolan today, we got Bret Baier today, we got Michael Oren from Israel, but the Cleveland Browns draft tonight, that's what matters to me on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Same time. And we are joined by Jeff Bartos, one of the front runners in Pennsylvania's Republican Senate primary. The debates, I think, are finished. The election is imminent. Jeff Bartos is a frequent guest on the program throughout the campaign. Welcome back, Jeff. Good to have you. This is the last appearance. I think I've evened up all the appearances with you. I think you're the last Pennsylvania would-be Senate nominee. How goes the campaign from your perspective?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, Hugh. It's great to hear your voice. And Ed, hello. Good morning to you as well. Before we talk about the campaign, my team's going to kill me, Hugh, when I mention this, but I want to just thank you for covering Walking with Destiny and having Andrew Roberts on a couple of weeks ago on your podcast. That was my January 1st this year present to myself, was Walking with Destiny. And on the hard days on the campaign trail, I found it just incredible to get away from the noise and focus on something I think that elevates all of us. And your podcast was outstanding. And you and I can geek out
Yeah, your
about
staff
this
is going to
time.
say... Yeah, the staff's going to say, why didn't you give your website already, Jeff? You got to give your website.
But I want to thank you, man. That podcast was awesome, and you are spot on.
You're welcome.
It's amazing. And as a candidate, I can tell you, we need that kind of inspiration from time to time in this crazy business that we're in. So the campaign's great. We had our debate. We had 2 debates this week already. On Monday was the televised debate with the 5 top-tier candidates, as it were. And then Tuesday night we had another debate. I think clearly I won both debates. I'm the only candidate talking about Main Street, Pennsylvania, talking about the issues that working families are dealing with. You cover this all the time. Inflation is a tax on working families. It's killing people, literally killing families all across the country. And here in Pennsylvania, families are making decisions every day about whether to fill up the gas tank, put food on the table, heat the home. Because it's still cold here, not in Texas, but it's still cold here. And the economic issues, the kitchen table issues, safety and security, our border, these are the key issues. And what we're seeing and what we saw on the debate stage this week, you had the 2 big spenders, the 2 out-of-staters, I call them the political tourists who parachuted in. They're fighting with each other on the airwaves. And I'm the only candidate from day one for over 15 months now have been fighting for Main Street, Pennsylvania.
Jeff Bartos, again, I have not endorsed anyone. You're all running hard-fought campaigns. My number one question, and it's what I lead off every debate I've moderated, is why are you better than the other 4 to beat Fetterman? Because he's going to be formidable, and he's going to have as much money as any Democratic candidate has in the United States because he appeals to their nut wing. All right, he just raises $10 contributions left, right, and center. Big, ominous guy. How come you're better than anyone else at beating Fetterman come November?
So let me be clear. I've gotten to know every candidate running on our side, and they're all good people, and they're all honorable people, and they've run good campaigns. I'm far and away the best candidate to beat John Fetterman in November because, think about it, over the last 2 years, every Democrat running is going to have to answer for lockdowns, shutdowns, schools closed, learning gaps, youth suicides, drug overdoses, communities literally at the fabric of who they are ripped apart, synagogues closed, churches closed, all of these mandates and lockdowns that you saw in California, Hugh, and that we certainly saw here in Pennsylvania. Every Democrat running, especially the Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman, are going to have to answer for that. And on the other side of the ledger, whereas the other Republicans, many of them weren't even living here, right? They literally weren't in Pennsylvania. Dave was in Aspen, Colorado. Mehmet was in New Jersey. Carla was in California or Denmark. I was on Main Street, Pennsylvania. I started a nonprofit to save small businesses early in the pandemic. We raised $3.5 million, helped over 1,000 women and men keep the lights on across all 67 counties in their small businesses. Imagine that, Hugh. 1,000 small businesses, meaning up to 10,000 jobs for working families that we helped save during the pandemic. There's not a Democrat running that can run against me effectively because I spent the pandemic helping people. They spent the pandemic shutting down people's lives and ruining communities. That is why I win. If you're Mehmet or Dave, you spent a lot of money on these TV ads, but they literally weren't here. And Pennsylvanians have been asking now for 6 months to each of us, where have you been the last 2 years? And what have you specifically done to help Pennsylvanians who were shut down? I'm the only Republican running who can answer that, looking people in the eye. I was here helping you on main streets across all 67 counties.
Jeff, greetings from warm and beautiful Texas to two of my friends in beautiful Pennsylvania as well. You mentioned two of my hot button issues, which is inflation and crime. But in this cycle, I think we can also now talk about something that also touches the lives every day of many voters, and those are the parents. What their students are being taught in schools, whether their students are being taught in schools. We saw a absolute red tidal wave in Virginia because of a revolt against the sort of elite, condescending snobbery of Democrats in that regard. Are you seeing this a similar phenomenon in Pennsylvania? How is it manifesting itself if you are seeing it?
Well, good morning in Texas, and I have my youngest is in school down in Houston, so make sure you look after her down there. Hopefully she'll be home next week. But we love Texas, and we'll forgive Houston for its left-wing proclivities. But it's a great question from day one. So I launched this campaign in March of 2021, and we launched it with a focus on Main Street, Pennsylvania. And what I talked about from day one was economic opportunity, safe and secure communities, and educational opportunity, empowering parents and students to make the best decisions for themselves and not having government-run schools make those decisions. The pandemic showed us what happens with this indoctrination. Now, Ed, when I launched the campaign, every genius out there told me I should be focused on this or focused on that. I'm focused on the wrong topics. And then Governor Youngkin wins in Virginia, and all of a sudden I look smart. But we have been campaigning on that from day one. And so I think you're absolutely right. It's a huge issue here in Pennsylvania. My friend Paul Martino, my friend Clarice Schillinger, they started a PAC in 2021 to elect school board candidates who were against indoctrination, but most specifically to make sure they pledged to keep schools open. And we had massive wins in November of 2021. As you saw in Virginia with the governor's race, we had massive wins across Pennsylvania electing school board candidates who were committed to keeping schools open and to teaching our kids, not telling them what to think, no indoctrination. That's a huge issue. It's something in the Senate I talk about every day in terms of what I want to see, but saving Main Street means safe and secure communities, economic opportunity, and educational choice, really, educational choice, empowering parents and students.
Now, Jeff, Hugh again. It's no secret. I wrote it in the Washington Post last week. I think Josh Shapiro, your Attorney General, is likely to be the next governor of Pennsylvania. It's going to take a heck of an effort to beat him because he's a formidable candidate. One of the reasons is he's not a crazy left-winger, and he supports Israel, and he's a serious on crime kind of guy. As you look out at the field, you're going to the United States Senate, and no one talks national security enough for me. And I know you got to talk about inflation and education because that's what people are talking about. But tell us a little bit about your national security orientation. I'm not sure Dr. Oz has actually got a clue about national security stuff. He won't come on the show. We've invited him a million times. I'm not against him. I just don't. I think he's actually kind of afraid to take a Hugh Hewitt interview and get asked about the looming tower or something. But where's your perspective on national security affairs?
Well, as I recall from our last time that you invited me to join you on air, you and I have a date to go to Israel together, and so we need to book that.
Yep.
So let me win this. Let me win this thing in November, and then we'll go to Israel together. But you and your family, love for you to join me and Cheryl on our next trip. Cheryl and I try to go every year. We're deeply involved in the U.S.-Israel relationship, and my national security view, my worldview, really stems a lot from all of our experience traveling around Israel and the Middle East. President Trump was the best president in our lifetime for the U.S.-Israel relationship, and any chance I get, I wanted to thank the Trump administration for what they did to bring peace to Israel and for maybe even 5 of her Gulf Arab neighbors. It's really, really remarkable what the Abraham Accords achieved. And so I want to go to the United States Senate with a deep understanding already of that dynamic. Let me state this very clearly, and I'm really glad you brought it up. The Biden administration today has tried to isolate, understandably and rightly, isolate Russia on the world stage. At the same time, they've asked Russia to lead the negotiations with the Islamic Republic of Iran on this so-called Iran nuclear deal 2.0, which would give Iran a patient pathway to a nuclear weapon. And so while we have huge economic challenges right here, and I agree that we need to be talking about those domestic challenges, we cannot lose sight of what's going on in the world. Vladimir Putin, obviously, illegal war of aggression against Ukraine, but Iran is working on a nuclear weapon today. That will completely destabilize all the work that the Trump administration did. It will absolutely do damage to safety and security in the Middle East. We can never allow that to happen.
Jeff Bartos, congratulations on running a great campaign. Run through the tape. We'll talk to you afterwards. Back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt, and I'm locked up. By that I mean I'm in a lock on the Seine River in France, and I hope we hold on to the signal. Ed Morrissey is with us in Texas, and Shannon Royce joins us from Washington, D.C. I'm very excited about this interview with Shannon, who I've known for a very long time. Shannon is now the president of the Christian Employers Alliance, CEA. And a few months ago, a good friend of mine in Oklahoma said, will you come down to Oklahoma and talk to the CEA, the Christian Employers Alliance, about the battles inside the Beltway? It's a young and growing organization that has been long needed in the public square. Ed Morrissey and I are here to help Shannon unpack her mission, what she does for the Christian Employers of America, and why CEA exists. Shannon, welcome. Great to have you. How are you, our friend?
I am doing great. I wish I were there with you. But I'm doing great in Falls Church, Virginia.
Yeah, no one feels bad for me this week. I got to work during my vacation. No, they're not feeling bad for me. I'm in France. Shannon Royce, tell us about the Christian Employers Alliance, how to find it, what the Twitter handles are, and what the mission is.
Absolutely. So Christian Employers Alliance is an alliance of Christian-owned businesses. We are 80% for-profit businesses and 20% nonprofit organizations. So we cover the span of the for-profit, nonprofit world. Our members are believers who want to live out their faith in everyday life, in their businesses and organizations, not just privately in their churches and homes. So they are people who are living out their faith in everyday life. Our mission is to unite, equip, and represent Christian-owned businesses to protect religious freedom and provide opportunities for employees, businesses, and communities to flourish. So this is really about our Matthew 5:16 call to be salt and light. That's the protect religious freedom side of the picture. And then to live abundantly, John 10:10, to live abundantly and help others do the same. So that's all of our mission.
If anyone is out there and they suddenly felt a tug on their heart, maybe I want to get involved in the Christian Employers Alliance. As soon as I heard about it, I said, count me in, I'm coming. I'm going to sign up my media company for it. I'm going to get people to come in. And then Shannon sat down with Mike Reed at Salem and said, let's figure out how we can help each other out. And I'm not sure how we're doing that, because we want to know if anyone signs up because of the broadcast they're listening to. But Shannon, how has the response been? I don't think a lot of people knew that CEA exists, but I know a lot of people have long desired a voice that is explicitly and evangelically oriented. It's not fundamentalist, it's not Catholic, it's not Protestant, it's not Lutheran, it's not Presbyterian, it's just Christian, mere Christianity, but it does have a worldview, right? It's a gospel worldview.
Absolutely. So we are the Christian Employers Alliance. Those who join have an Orthodox perspective of faith. We have an Orthodox statement of faith as a part of our requirement to join. And those who are interested in exploring us can simply go to our website at ChristianEmployersAlliance.org, ChristianEmployersAlliance.org. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Getter, all over the place as Join CEA. Join CEA. It's an easy handle to remember. And yes, the response has been really strong, Hugh. We've doubled our membership in the last year, and our goal for 22 is to double our membership again. Our employers are across the United States, across industries. We're from the smallest employer, 1 or 2 employees, all the way up to over 40,000. So definitely a place to visit for our guests on the show today.
Shannon, this is Ed Morrissey, and I want to thank you for being with us today, talking about Christian Employers Alliance, which is ChristianEmployersAlliance.org. If you have the website up in front of you, you should at this point in time. And it appears to me that what you're doing here is almost like a whole service type of relationship with Christian employers. I mean, you're putting people together for greater impact. Looks like there's a way to do best practices between members, as well as linking up with other resources when the inevitable legal pushbacks begin or political pushbacks begin. Tell us a little bit about the linking up for common defense at CEA.
Absolutely. So we have 4 things, Ed, that we really try to do in representing Christian employers. We serve as their watchmen, so we're watching for law and regulations that would affect religious freedom, economic concerns, their communities. So we serve as their watchmen. Your question is really about our service as their shield to protect them from regulatory concerns and pressures of cancel culture. And so we file lawsuits on behalf of Christian employers where they can stay anonymous, and we represent their concerns. We did that in the vaccine mandate situation, and of course that was overturned by the Supreme Court gratefully. So we serve as their shield where they get to stay anonymous. We serve as their voice. So I'm here today talking to you and other media representatives on Capitol Hill about the concerns of Christian employers. You know, unfortunately, the Chamber of Commerce and other business groups really don't represent the concerns of Christian employers. And unfortunately, they are repeatedly and actively landing on the wrong side of concerns, moral values, ethical concerns, biblical sexual morality, those kinds of things. And finally, we are an opportunity for community. We bring our members together for conference calls and webinars. We have our fall summit coming in September at Museum of the Bible. So we just are that one-stop shop for our members to get engaged.
That lousy keynote speaker at your first conference. That would be me. But I do. At the time, I thought to myself, there's a National Association of Broadcasters, the NAB, and then there's a National Association of Religious Broadcasters, the NRB. Both are integral to my business because I got some NAB issues and I got some NRB issues. And Chamber's falling apart. So even if you like the Job Creators Network, and I do, CEA, Christian Employers Alliance, has a different set of concerns. And some people have said to me, do we need another legal defense? You know, we don't. We got the Alliance Defending Freedom. We got some other great. We need someone that's actually not litigating all the time, someone who's actually kind of helping people organize and figure out the best practices. And all across the United States, corporations are being bombarded with social, environmental, and good governance issues. Well, CEA's weighing in on that. So just talk a little bit about the average CEA agenda for a private employer. And you might be a car dealer in Wisconsin, you might be a dry cleaner in Louisiana, but you're gospel believer, you might be Catholic, Presbyterian, you might be LD, whatever you are someone, a person of faith, and you want an organization that takes you seriously and doesn't wink, wink, nod, nod take you seriously, but really takes you seriously.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I'll give you an example of one of the services we provide Hugh that addresses these kinds of concerns. So Christian employers, like other employers, want to provide good health care for their employees. But Christian employers want that health care to be values-based so that they have the opportunity to protect life. They don't want to support abortion and abortion-inducing drugs. They don't want to support transgender transition in their health care because it violates their religious convictions. And so we have a health care program called Covenant Choice that is a values-based program, values-based health care, full-blown health care, values-based, and it provides transparency, flexibility, and control to the employer, but it is values-based, and they get to take care of their employees while not violating their conscience concerns. So
and Shannon, I want people to know as well before I want people to know that one of the smartest lawyers I know in the United States told me about CEA and said they are sophisticated and they know what they're doing. And that's what I think some CEA members are going to find out by joining CEA, is that there's a world of regulatory gray in which they need Sherpas, guides, leaders to help them through. And that's what Shannon and her team does. Over to you, Ed. I see you nodding. It's your turn.
Yes, and you mentioned earlier cancel culture, and I want to just take a look at the aspects of this alliance beyond legal defense, right? And you've already described a lot of things beyond legal defense, but there is a value in having a community of Christian employers against not just legal assaults, but social assaults on the ability to live their Christian faith in how they conduct their business. Tell us a little bit about how that solidarity is built through CEA and the value it has for your members.
Absolutely. Well, I'll just talk for a moment about our fall conference. The theme of our conference is Navigating Uncharted Waters, Appointed for the Journey. And the focus of that meeting is going to be on the reality of cancel culture and the other things hitting our employers: inflation, interest rates, supply chain concerns, hiring challenges, all of those kind of things in this volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous moment that our employers are trying to run their businesses. And our focus at the meeting is going to be the alternatives that we can provide to our members to address some of those concerns. So if you're canceled from your bank, where do you go? If your credit card company cancels your payment or your donations coming into our nonprofits, what do you do? Those are the kinds of things that we will be addressing at our fall summit in September.
So Shannon, Royce, how does somebody join the Christian Employers Alliance? What do they do?
It is easy. You come to our website at ChristianEmployersAlliance.org. There's a very straightforward application you complete, and we pick up from there and walk with you through the process.
Now, you know the left is going to come at you. The secular absolutists are going to say that, oh, this is just a front group for some right-wing nutters. I just know what's coming. How are you protected against that? Someone's going to tape your entire meeting, and they're going to hear my boring speech about how it's important to live your faith out in the public square. They're going to, it's not that exciting in terms of controversy. You're just doing the blocking and tackling of being a good employer. But are you prepared for that?
Yes, sir. We are prepared, and we are preparing. It's a process, obviously, and we are in that process. We do have legal protection from our friends at Alliance Defending Freedom and other friends. But remember, Hugh, we are the Christian Employers Alliance, and we happen to believe there is a good God who is looking out for his children, not just CEA, but his children around the nation who are running their businesses. And so we count on him, and we do all the best practices, but we also rely on his protection.
Well, keep coming back, Shannon, Royce, because we love that CEA is in the field. I salute you. I was so happy to get the honored to be there at the first gathering of what I hope is thousands of gatherings going forward. Shannon, Royce, ChristianEmployersAlliance.org. Thank you. Back America, it's Hugh Hewitt with Ed Morrissey in Texas as I am in France. Jim Talent is either in Missouri or inside the Beltway. Good morning, Senator, with the Bipartisan Policy Center. This is a very important thing I've been waiting to ask you. Vladimir Putin seemed to rattle the nuclear saber louder than he has ever done before yesterday. What did you make of that? What do you think we ought to be doing in response to it? And then I'll let Ed, we'll just badminton with you, Senator. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. My guess is that he greatly fears, and I think he's correct in this, that he's going to lose unless he can break the will of the Western democracies to continue supplying Ukraine. And this is his way of doing it. There is, however, a non-zero possibility, Hugh, that he's going to use tactical nuclear weapons. This is why you want to deter kinetic conflict. And as you and I have discussed, you can't deter kinetic conflict with economic tools, particularly when you're economically dependent on the aggressor, right? So maybe we really should have maintained a strong force posture in Eastern Europe and sent the right signals to him. So I agree with what Robert O'Brien put in the article. You have to prepare to escalate in the conventional domain and impose costs and consequences on him that will make him regret a decision like that. And then I would just say publicly that. I mean, I would not get into specifics at all, but I would just say, look, if he does that, he's going to suffer costs and consequences, and we're going to teach him a lesson. I would also strongly, if we have any solid intel that he's really considering it, I'd pass it along to the Chinese back channel, because I don't think they want him to do that. And I think they still have some influence with him.
Senator Talent, thank you for being here. What do we know about the Russian system for authorization of nuclear weapons, either tactical or strategic? There's been, do we know whether or not this is a decision that is fully within Putin's hands? Is there a process by which maybe we can hope that rational minds will prevail in this process, or is it just too corrupt and Putin's the only guy with his hand on the button?
Well, I think you have to assume when you're dealing with Russia that whatever the formal, it's a secure system, I should say. It's not like a rogue state where somebody might take control of it, some outside faction, and use it. So from everything we know, it's a secure system. I think you have to assume that regardless of what the formal procedure is, that he has control, because he's good at exercising control over his own security and his own military apparatus. I mean, he's maneuvered very effectively to do that. So I think we have to act on the assumption that if he is determined to do it, that he can do it, and so that therefore he is the one that we have to deter. Well, of course, we could hope that something would happen within the Russian hierarchy if he really signaled he was going to do it.
So in terms of what Robert O'Brien wrote, Senator Talent, he suggested that Joe Biden or Tony Blinken actually articulate what would follow as day follows night, to steal the phrase from Eisenhower. What do you make about that? Because I've heard nothing from anyone in the Biden administration about what they would do were a tactical nuclear weapon to be used on the battlefield in Ukraine.
Yeah, I'd prefer that publicly we make clear that we will respond using any and all means that we think appropriate. I agree with what Robert said and what Mike Pompeo said on the show. I think it was last Friday, that you get the list ready, that if he uses it, you execute. I think Pompeo said, that's not the time for planning, that's the time for execution. But I'm always reluctant, particularly in the nuclear sphere, to talk about specifics. Because in a sense, that limits your options, right? If you say this is what we will do, then the aggressor thinks, well, they won't do anything else. So I would prefer to be clear that we will respond powerfully, but not to get into specifics.
Senator Talent, how much does European reluctance to provide that sort of explicit deterrent play into this as well? I mean, it's not just the U.S. here. We're also talking about working in concert with a number of allies on the European continent.
Yeah, it's a good question, Ed, and I think that's the challenge with NATO. But this is where you need leadership, okay? And it would have been helpful if we had not had almost 18 months of weakness and indecision and incompetence in terms of executing important foreign and national security initiatives, i.e. Afghanistan. But we should be working with the NATO allies right now, discussing what menu of options and responses they will support and should support in that kind of an instance. And so, you want to do it through NATO, particularly in Europe. You almost, I think, have to, but you got to work with the allies in doing it, and we need to be doing that right now.
Quick one, Senator Talent. Do you trust the Germans to stay in the game? They're back in. They've been in and out this week. They're back in. Do you trust them to stay in?
I trust them about as much as Rick Grinnell trusts them. What do you think about that?
Ha! For those who know, that's not very much. Jim Talent trusts him as much as I trust the Steelers fans. Don't go anywhere, America. Senator Jim Talent, thank you. Follow him on Twitter at Jim Talent. His numbers are probably going up like Ed Morrissey, at Ed Morrissey, like Hugh Hewitt, at Hugh Hewitt. I think I gained another triple-figure burst during the first 2 hours of the show on Twitter as they've opened up the locks on Twitter. Keep going there and signing up, America. I'll be right back. Morning, Glory America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Hugh Hewitt broadcasting live from France on the Seine River. As a matter of fact, we're moving along as we go. Ed Morrissey is joining me from Texas in the event the French internets decide they don't want to work for a float radio show. And from Washington, D.C., we're joined by the host of Fox News Special Report. And this weekend, he will be hosting Fox News Sunday as well, our friend Bret Baier. Hello, Bret. You're on with Hugh and Ed. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, good morning. Let's see, good afternoon yet? Yes, I guess so for you, Hugh. It's
Yes.
a long way to go to
Yes,
cover
it
the
is.
French elections.
It was. Someone had to do it. And so I volunteered, and I was happy to do it. Bret, tonight I'm going to have to be up in the middle of the night, though, to watch the NFL draft and see what the Browns do or don't. Are you a draft nut the way that you're a golf guy? Do you care about the NFL draft the way I do?
I mean, I don't care about it the same way as I do golf, but I do follow it. And, I'm a transplanted Atlanta Falcons fan, but I've now become a Washington fan, and now I'm a Washington Commanders fan. And I keep on tripping over it because what do you say short for Commanders? I mean, is it commies? What do we do? I'm looking forward to it.
Well, Bret, before we turn you over to Ed for his first question, I want to ask you two. First, have you seen any change to the Bret Baier account on Twitter? There is an allegation running around that some people have lost followers and others, the center people, the moderate people like you, the conservatives like me, are gaining followers. Ed's gained followers. Have you seen any change at all in the Bret Baier account or the special report account?
I've got at Bret Baier, and it's gone up, I guess, 10,000, 14,000. I don't know what the average is, but it's definitely gone up more than usual. I was up to like 1.42 million, and now I'm getting back up to that point. Before everybody lost a lot of followers after the last election.
That is actually statistically significant. I was always skeptical that there was any kind of filter underway, but I'm beginning to yield to the information that is flowing in. Second thing I want to ask you about is you were kind enough to go out to the Nixon Library, and it's quite a show when Special Report goes on the road. I've seen you do that. I've seen how much work it takes, but you were kind enough to do that and to moderate the conversation between former National Security Advisor and our mutual friend Robert C. O'Brien, Ambassador O'Brien, and his unusual and unexpected friend, actor Sean Penn. How did that conversation go, and what did you learn from that? And were you as surprised as I was to find out they had become pals?
Yeah, and when I first found out, I thought, wow, what a great possibility of doing an interview. And then Robert reached out and said, well, how about we do it at the Nixon Library? And I said, sure. So we put it up the flagpole, and we moved Special Report out there, and then we did this hour-long conversation, which actually will become a Fox Nation special in just a few days, where it'll include all kinds of video from Sean's documentary. I thought it was really fascinating. I thought, well, first of all, Sean was great and was really interesting. And, despite their political and ideological differences, they are actually really good friends. And I think that obviously came across in the presentation.
Bret,
Edward.
Earlier today, Hugh and I were discussing what the top story is. And we both agree that it's really the Ukrainian war. It should be the top story around the globe. The top domestic story to me, though, is the purchase of Twitter, and not because one billionaire is buying it from another, but because what it reveals about some of the people who are on Twitter. And I wanted to ask you about this. Are you as shocked and disappointed as many of us are to see journalists who operate in the First Amendment space arguing for censorship, arguing for viewpoint suppression, arguing for the type of regime that exists at Twitter now, rather than what Elon Musk has proposed, which is basically to allow the same types of conversations that are allowable under typical First Amendment laws as it is right now?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting to look at whose head is exploding and whose is not. And I think that, if you look at the big picture, I always admired the Biden campaign when they said that the Twitter reaction is not the real life reaction. And yet, there are a lot of people on the left who have really had a real problem about Elon Musk taking over. I don't know if you saw the Ari Melber kind of rant about what is possible if someone owns Twitter. And as he's discussing it, it is basically what many conservatives believe had happened all along here throughout the election and afterwards. So I do think it's interesting to watch. I think it's a blip in time, and we'll soon be over this and see how influential Twitter is.
Yeah, fair, balanced, and unafraid is the catchphrase over at Special Report, and has been for a long period of time. And I'm kind of fair, balanced, and unafraid on the radio show. I want to ask you about Twitter specifically, though, Bret. The late Andrew Breitbart was a friend of mine. I'm sure a friend of both of yours. And in one of his last public appearances, he said, I disagree with Professor Hewitt because he tells me not to engage with trolls and people who attack me, and I always do. And I always said, Andrew, don't do it. Don't feed the trolls. Bret, you're very generous to people who attack you online. What is the calculation in your mind engaging with Twitter followers that way?
Well, you know what? I look at it like this, that it's one viewer at a time, and the really aggressive tweets that coming after me or the show or something we did, I don't think that they think that they're going to be called out or singled out or lifted up by saying what they're saying. So what I do is I answer whatever their charge is and say something like, thanks for watching, or see you tomorrow at 6 p.m. There's a lot of people who say, I am never watching again. And then the next day they tweet, in the second block you had this story on, and it becomes interesting. And obviously other people read the back and forth, and I think it, one viewer at a time.
Bret, just to give a fair and balanced look at the Elon Musk purchase of Twitter, there are certainly some concerns about having multi-billionaires buy out platforms. What I'm a little shocked to read these concerns coming from the Washington Post, Bloomberg, the New York Times, all of whom have been bought out, or at least whole or in part, or founded by billionaires. But there's some concern about that. Do you think that there's a fair amount of criticism, and where is the fair criticism of this coming from, or at least the fair scrutiny of this? What sources do you think are actually reliable in terms of reporting on this?
Yeah, listen, there's always been concern. This is time and again. This is media properties all the way back to the beginning of media. And you can see Congress calling people up and saying, what's fair and what's not. But listen, I think you're going to get a bipartisan push, in part because of Elon Musk's purchase. And it's going to be about social media, big tech, and there's going to be some regulatory commission set up, if I had to guess, where there would be certain stipulations and guidelines that you have to get a license, and there's a board, a commission that oversees it of civilian experts. That's what I'm hearing is coming together, both Republicans and Democrats, and it may have been spurred on by this move, which is really interesting in the big picture because we've been dealing with billionaires owning media properties for a long time.
So, Bret, let me ask you, and I want to preface this. I'm coming back to the country late Saturday night, and I want to warn Pastor Larry and my good father, I will not be in their congregations on Sunday. I'm claiming the jet lag exception to the Sunday obligation for Catholics to attend Mass. That's in the Baltimore Catechism. I know you don't know who you're going to be covering. It's there. I'm sure I saw it. But when you try and set up a show on Sunday, when we have Vladimir Putin threatening the use of nuclear weapons, do you just tell the producers, hang loose, we'll figure it out Saturday night at midnight? We have 1 minute.
Yeah, I do. I think I know we're going to have a foreign policy guest, someone who is up on Capitol Hill. We're working a lot of different avenues. I've got a great staff at Fox News Sunday that I'm working with. We'll have a great guest on that topic specifically because it really is the biggest issue in the big picture. But there are a lot of other things to cover domestically, and we'll have it covered with a lot of interesting people, I bet.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll be waking up in time to watch Bret on Fox News Sunday, though I won't be in the pew, Larry. Don't look for me. Thank you, Bret Baier. Follow him at Twitter at Bret Baier, as tens of thousands of people are allowed to now. Apparently, I was wrong about that. I never believed it was true, but sure is showing up in the evidence. Ed Morrissey, Bret Baier. People are, and you can follow them both. And of course, Hugh Hewitt. Follow me to the next segment right here from France. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome back, America. I'm Hugh Hewitt in France. Ed Morrissey is my co-host. He is in Texas, and our guest is State Senator Matt Dolan from the great state of Ohio. Matt Dolan, welcome back to the Hugh Hewitt Show. It's great to talk to you as usual.
Thank you, Hugh. I'm glad to be back. Hi, Ed. Nice being with you.
He's nodding too, but I'm going to dive in because we got a delay from Texas. Senator, the Ohio Senate race is the single most interesting Senate race I have followed in my 30 years of broadcasting. There are 5 of you. It's a dead heat. I think independents lead all of you. Am I right about that, Senator?
Well, undecided voters lead all of us. Yes, that is correct. And undecided voters who, I was the last one in the race, so I believe the undecided voters now are starting to pay attention and recognize that I'm the only one that's been talking about Ohio. I've been talking about the issues. I haven't been caught up in the theater. And we need to send somebody to Washington who's actually going to get something done. We've got to stop the Biden administration and prepare for tomorrow's opportunities when we take the White House in 24.
Now, Matt, before I go to the key issues politically, I got to ask you about the key issues of sports. Ohio is a divided state because those poor people in Toledo root for the Lions. I'm a Browns fan. You got Bengals voters listening, and you got some Steelers fans who sneak in. So what do you expect tonight from the Browns, the Bengals, the Steelers, and the Lions in draft night? You got anyone that you're – I know you're a Browns guy at heart.
I mean, the Browns did a lot of their drafting through the free agent market, so I don't even think they have a first-round pick. I guess if I were the Bengals, I would draft anyone who can protect Joe Burrow. Make sure he stands up as he can do his work. The Steelers, Hugh. My hope every year for the Steelers is they don't draft anybody from Boston College, my alma mater, or Ohio State, so I have absolutely no reason to root for them. And the Lions, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Yeah, we don't really worry about that. But you've campaigned up until you've campaigned up in Toledo. There are Lions fans up there, right? We're on the air right now out of Detroit, and I get Toledo listeners listening to me and they love Detroit.
And I love Northwest Ohio, and I've been up there many times as a state senator and as a candidate for U.S. Senate. But, when it comes to the Cleveland sports, I've been very clear. I'm a Cleveland fan. So I hope every game is competitive, but I want Cleveland to come out on top.
Good for you. Now, Senator, let me ask you about this race. When it comes down to it, whoever wins this has got to beat Tim Ryan. I know Tim pretty well. He's going to be formidable. It was the first question I asked you guys and Jane when we had the debate, and it's going to be the last first question I ask in an interview. Why are you better positioned than the other 4 to beat? We got to hold this seat to win in November against a well-funded and a very experienced candidate, Tim Ryan.
Well, there's lots of reasons. One is I have the requisite campaign experience as well as the results. Experience with results that Ohioans can look to somebody and say, here's a guy that's actually achieved something for Ohio on behalf of Ohio that's impacted all of Ohio. Tim Ryan's got a record in Congress where he's got nothing to point to say that what he has done. I've been on the ballot. I have achieved a winning in Democratic areas by appealing not just to Republican voters, but appealing to independent voters as well. Look, this race is going to be expensive. I have the ability to raise money, but it's also going to be it's going to be the balance of the Senate. We can't lose Ohio. So I think someone like me who has been relentlessly talking about Ohio can appeal to all Ohioans to understand that when Dolan serves in the majority in the U.S. Senate, they are going to know that somebody's in Washington fighting for them, for all Ohioans to get things done, to make sure that America is strong, make sure Ohio remains strong. I don't have to change my message. Everyone else in this race is going to have to figure out how to change their message because they've been running theater to get one person's vote. I've been running to get Ohio Republicans, and my message will appeal to all Ohioans.
Now, Senator, I also remember from the debate, and I want to make sure I put this out there, the one thing that distinguished you from the other five at that time, Bernie dropped out, is that you wanted infrastructure. You're a big believer in infrastructure. Has that served you well or not in the campaign as it's unfolded and culminates next week?
Yes, it has served me well because it's an understanding that I know the difference between a good bill and a bad bill. And the infrastructure bill negotiated by Senator Rob Portman did not raise our taxes, did not raise the debt, but brought in strategic investment in Ohio. Brent Spence Bridge in Cincinnati. For years, Republicans and Democrats have been talking about doing it. Finally, it's done. Broadband in Northeast Ohio. Port and rail improvement in Northwest and Northeast Ohio. You know, how can you say you are fighting for Ohio? Every one of us had an opportunity to step up and say, I want to do what's necessary for Ohio so we can be economically competitive. And I am the only one that stood up to that. And you know, look, I think there's political reasons why. I don't think President Trump wanted to give President Biden a win, so they all sided with that. You know, I'm going to Washington to fight for Ohio. My agenda is not going to be set by anybody else but what's good for Ohio and what's good for America.
So I want to get into the economy because obviously it's going to be the most important issue in the primary as well as in the general election. Breaking news from the Bureau of Economic Analysis: the first quarter GDP actually decreased 1.4% annualized. Actually went down. So the economy is, and real final sales of product also decreased 0.6%. It's not simply an inventory issue. There's some supply chain issues. Consumer spending is up just slightly. There's a lot of structural issues in the economy right now. How much does that impact what's going to happen on Tuesday? And what do you think the proper message will be now that we're seeing even more economic turmoil than perhaps the administration wanted to admit?
Look, this is going to resonate on Tuesday because I've been the only one talking about how Biden administration is destroying our economy and our economic growth. And, you know, when you have an administration that's disincentivizing private employment, wants more people on government payroll, it's not surprising GDP goes down. When you have an administration who on day one said, Ohio and American workers, we're not going to rely on you for our energy and oil creation, we're going to go to our enemies, it's not surprising that GDP goes down and inflation continues to rise. The Biden administration, you know, is now being revealed that it is really tough to raise a family, to have a small business under the Biden administration. I know today he's meeting with small businesses. Guess what? I've been meeting with small business owners for the last 6 months on this campaign, and it has been relentless about the problems, the over-regulations, the disincentive to get employees back to work, how expensive it is now to get oil and gas into their business. So if he's truly having a small business meeting this afternoon, he's going to hear from them to recognize we've got to get rid of the Biden administration, and you got to send somebody like me who's willing to execute on Republican ideas and values to get things done. We can't just point out problems. We've got to get things done.
You know, Matt Dolan, I have been telling people that stagflation hadn't been here since the 70s. You're younger than I am, so you don't even remember it. But I can't believe the economy contracted 1.4%. I'm kind of gobsmacked by that. I thought it was going to go up 1%. It was going to be slow growth. And that combines with inflation I mean, it's going to be a real sour mood next week in Ohio, a very sour mood. What do voters tell you about this? They got to deal with the gas prices, and now people are going to be laying off. That means folks are losing their jobs.
That's why elections matter, and that's how you run your campaign is how you're going to govern. And if we're going to campaign on theater, then we're not going to get anything done. And I think the voters are starting to recognize we need to send somebody with experience, with results, to get there and take on these challenges. Look, in Ohio, I've cut your taxes. I've reduced your regulation. I have provided infrastructure and all the above energy, working with the Ohio legislature so that we can bring the Intels of the world to Ohio so that we can not only have good economy, but we can stand up to China. those are the things that we need to get done in Washington, and I'm the one that can get it done. And I do remember, Hugh, with my dad. I remember when I was young. I was about 8 or 9 years old, but we had to, you'd look in the back of your car to see what number your license plate was to determine if this is the day you could get gas or not. I mean, we can't get back to that. We cannot go back to that.
Matt Dolan, let me also ask you the question I've asked everyone, what's in it for Warren? And originally it was a joke, but it's not really a joke. I added an affiliate in Youngstown Warren about 3 weeks ago, so they haven't heard you before. That's why I wanted to make sure everyone got on the last month of the campaign, because we added a Youngstown Warren affiliate that's pretty good reach to our Cleveland and Columbus and Cincinnati and Toledo affiliates, Dayton. What is it in it for Warren? And I ask that as a hometown boy, but also because Northeastern Ohio always comes in last in every race. What's in it for Ohio, or for Warren?
Well, I appreciate that. Well, one thing that Mahoning Valley knows with me is that I've been there frequently, not just as a candidate. I have been down there as a state senator, listening to them, figuring out ways to help the Voltage Valley grow. America Makes is a huge program that's going to help with skilled manufacturing, working with Eastern Gateway so that we are providing an opportunity for high school kids who may not want to go to 2 or 4 year colleges, but there's an attractive workload out there. So with me, the Mahoning Valley is going to get somebody intimately familiar with their challenges and their opportunities. I mean, I enjoy a lot of endorsement from the Republicans down there because they know I've been there. So when I look at Warren and I look at Youngstown, I see Cleveland. And I know the opportunities Cleveland has, and I know what we can accomplish here. We can accomplish the same thing in Washington as long as, government is strategically involved, but mostly is allow the private sector to develop, have the skill sets so there's workforce, make sure we have the requisite energy so that there is the ability to grow and expand, particularly around the area of Voltage Valley. I think that's an exciting future for the Mahoning Valley.
Good, Scott. Really quickly here, Senator, one final question. I would like to talk a little bit about education and parental rights. It's obviously a big movement, grassroots movement, and I know that Ohio is experiencing this as well. Very quickly, how do you address that in your campaign?
You address it by recognizing that parents need to make the decision. So all these education decisions need to be local. And the last thing we need to do is go to Washington and federalize the election system. I will go to Washington and make sure that there isn't strings attached to any federal dollars that may or may not arrive in school systems, that they have to behave a certain way or enact a certain curriculum. But I want the decisions to be made locally by parents, working with the school board, working with the superintendent. That's how we're going to get back to regular education, is when parents rise up and say, enough is enough.
Matt Dolan, I want to thank you for coming on early and often, as have all the candidates. It's been a fair and a wonderful race. Good kick through the running line. Say hello to Joan for me. Say hello to everyone in Northeastern Ohio and throughout the state. Matt Dolan, Dolan for Ohio on Twitter. DOLAN, the number 4, Ohio on Twitter.